I'm back. Did you miss me? What has it been, like a month? Which, I mean, in internet time is like 6 months, so hopefully you're getting this because hopefully you have notifications on. If you don't, you know where to go. Sorry, I've been active for a while. I've had a lot of personal life stuff going on, whether it's work, school, or just overall life-related life things. I don't have a life. What am I talking about? So sorry that I haven't been posting a lot of YouTube videos, but I have been posting a lot of reviews on my Letterboxd. If you want to go check that out, it will be right here and in the description below. But just to be clear, I have been watching a ton of movies this past month, and although I can't get to all of them in terms of video format, I know, I'm sorry, I can get into 4 that I really want to talk about, and not so much a video by video format, but overall a quick review of all 4 of the films. Whether you like this format or not, don't expect this to be my usual sort of review format. It's just something to get everyone caught up on the 4 big movies that I saw that I really want to talk about. So the first movie we're going to talk about is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Wow, that title is a mouthful. Just so that you guys know, I love the Mission Impossible movies. I don't think they're as good as the John Wick series per se, but right below John Wick, I truly do believe that the Mission Impossible franchise is one of the greatest action movie series ever made. And while I don't think Dead Reckoning Part 1 is necessarily my favorite of the franchise, it is up there in terms of the great Mission Impossible movies, and thus up there with the great action movies, period. The action scenes in this movie are amazing. The set pieces are gigantic. The spyware setup makes every scene so tense. And needless to say, like every other Mission Impossible movie before this, the stunt work is jaw-dropping. The tenseness of each scene is also amplified by the fact that literally everyone in this movie is sort of combining together to take down Ethan Hunt and his team. One of the staples of what makes a great Mission Impossible movie and just a great spy movie altogether is the fact that you can never know who you can trust within the setting. You just never know who's on Ethan's side and who's not, even within his own team. And the villain that they set up in Part 1 that will go from Part 1 to Part 2 as the big bad for this two-parter is actually so much fun and horrifyingly realistic. I'm not gonna spoil who or what the villain is because, to be fair to all of the trailers, they never spoiled it. So I will just say the villain might be sort of silly to a lot of people, but for me, not only is that silliness where a lot of the fun is, but when you really think about it, again, it's scary how realistic that villain is. If I had any big complaints with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, I got that out in one breath, and I'm so proud of myself for that. It's the acting does come off as a bit too overly serious at times. Don't get me wrong, I think the acting in this movie is so good, but there are times where the silliness of the concept and the dramaticness of the acting does clash a bit. But overall, as a Mission Impossible movie, I had a ton of fun. As an action movie, I had a ton of fun. And as a Part 1, I can't wait for Part 2. And now we move on to, let's be honest, one of the 2 biggest movies in this summer, Oppenheimer. I gotta tell you guys, the minute that this movie was even announced, I was hooked. Christopher Nolan is without a doubt one of, if not my favorite director of all time, and hearing that he was going to be telling the story about the creator of the atom bomb himself, J. Robert Oppenheimer, I was hooked immediately. And then the gigantic cast was announced, and then the trailers came out, and then every single person who got an early screening of it was saying that it was by far Christopher Nolan's magnum opus. And I walked into this movie with the highest of expectations, and it completely met every single one. This movie was seriously mind-blowingly incredible. The acting from every single cast member is Oscar-worthy.
Cillian Murphy copies the real Oppenheimer's mannerisms so well, he sounds exactly like the actual physicist at times. While Robert Downey Jr. doesn't have the most screen time, he makes every second count. And Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, and Florence Pugh are fantastic additions to the supporting cast, and each of them are given their own moments to shine. Essentially, every single actor that the camera points to gives their A game in this movie, and it just adds so much to the intensity and the realism of this film. Because, my God, the directing, the editing, the sound design, the score, the cinematography, all of it just blends together to create this overall experience that is unlike anything I've seen in film for a while. You truly do get caught up in just the passion of Oppenheimer's genius when he's creating the atom bomb with every single person around him, and they're counting down those seconds to that giant test. My God, my heart was in my throat. It was some of the most euphoric filmmaking I've ever seen on the big screen. And while some people might have a major issue with the fact that this is a 3-hour-long movie, and mind you, at times it does feel like 3 hours long, I did not care in the slightest because, one, this movie is about Oppenheimer. If you're not telling the full story of everything that the audience needs to know about the creator of the atom bomb, you're doing something wrong. And two, when it comes to filmmaking, I am never opposed to a long runtime. In my opinion, if you have a story that is worth 4 hours long, 3 hours long, hell, even 5 hours long, take the time you need. If you're telling that big of an important story, you need that time. Nolan needed that time to tell the full story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, and I could not be any more satisfied with the end result. Now, mind you, I have no association with Barbie. I never played with them. Sure, I saw some of my cousins playing with them when they were kids, but I have no history with them, which is why just seeing the trailers for this movie and seeing how funny each trailer progressively got, I got more and more excited for the release of this movie. They knew they were making something absolutely ridiculous, and I loved how self-aware they were about it. And after sitting down in that movie theater for 2 hours, I can honestly say, I don't know which film is more thought-provoking, Oppenheimer or Barbie. Mind you, Barbie is completely clever, so much fun, but it does bring up important topics that I did not expect the movie to bring up. It tackles so many themes related to both the patriarchy, how the world sees women, and also how Barbie affected the world in both the best and the worst ways. It analyzes so many themes about what it means to be a woman, and what the best path to take as a society in terms of gender equality amongst both men and women. It's literally like Mattel just gave Greta Gerwig Barbie and said, and just make this comedy around it. I'm sure you can do something really funny. And instead of just making just a comedy, she also decided to make something that was important to every single person of every single gender. As a guy, and I'm pretty sure if you're just open-minded enough, you will learn a lot from this movie. Not just about its themes, but even about the history of Barbie, which, along with all of its morals and themes that this movie has, also has enough room to teach the history of Barbie to the people who don't know it. And along with all of that, they make it funny as hell. Not only are there so many great jokes about Barbie and society, but it works because the actors are giving it their all in every comedic sense. Margot Robbie is really layered as Barbie, Ryan Gosling as Ken is hilariously serious, and Will Ferrell is such a great satire of how CEOs only act like they understand their consumers. You have that great comedic cast, you have that great comedic writing, you have all of those great morals along along with some fantastic set design and fantastic costumes that truly look they were ripped straight from the actual toys themselves. If I had one minor nitpick, it's that maybe the message is just hammered home a bit too much, especially by the climax of the movie, where the message plays a crucial part in the progression of the story. And even though, again, that does kind of make me the villain that this story is portraying, it is a legitimate issue that I do have with the movie. That said, that is still only a minor nitpick with the overall film, because I absolutely love how hilarious and interesting Barbie is. And finally, we have A24's new horror film, Talk to Me. Now, for those of you who don't know, which is probably all of you, I have loved Raka Raka, the directors of this movie, since I was in middle school. I watched so many of their YouTube videos. I watched all of their YouTube videos that I could, even with YouTube constantly age restricting them. I watched them throughout my entire teenage years, to the point where when I realized that Michael Philippou and Danny Philippou were directing this movie, I couldn't wait to see it. And after hearing that this was one of the scariest horror films of the decade, I got even more excited. I couldn't wait to see this movie. I was so happy of these YouTubers that I followed since I was a kid. And thank God they didn't let me down. Talk to Me is legitimately one of the greatest and scariest horror films of the past 10 years. I think one of the biggest reasons why this movie works so well is the acting. Everyone in this movie is so genuine in their reactions and chemistry with each other. You feel the love and closeness all of these characters have with one another, so that when the horror stuff actually happens to them, you feel their pain and confusion. There is so much time spent developing each of the characters and all of their motivations and all of their relationships with each other that you really do care for them and don't want anything bad to happen to them, despite the fact that it's a horror movie. You know bad things are going to happen to them. And when the horror stuff does happen to them, my God, it is terrifying. To be fair, it does start off as just this innocent little game that is legitimately spooky, but they do have rules that keep them all safe. But once those rules are inevitably broken, all hell breaks loose. And I mean all psychological hell. There were points where I was just in the movie theater, in the fetal position, just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There are no cheap jump scares in the movie, like a fake out jump scare, or a jump scare that is only scary because there's a giant boom. Every single jump scare in this movie is legitimately terrifying, and every single scare in this movie is legitimately terrifying because of the great cinematography, the great lighting, the great sound design, and the fantastic acting. And the ending brings some of the most horrific existential dread to a film that I have seen in so long. More than Oppenheimer, in fact, in my opinion. The ending of this movie legitimately had me speechless because of just how scared I was. If I had any minor, minuscule nitpick whatsoever with this film, it is that at times, even though throughout the film, it blends a tone of comedy and horror masterfully, there are points where the editing could have been a bit spaced out between two scenes so that we could focus more on the horror or comedy aspect more instead of them just clashing into each other at times. But besides that, no, this film is actually so good, so scary, so well done, and honestly, Michael Philippou, Danny Philippou, Raka Raka, as a huge lifelong fan, I couldn't be more happy. I couldn't be more happy with almost every single movie that I saw this past July. I mean, every single one of them either met my high expectations or exceeded my high expectations.
This truly might be one of the greatest summers for film in a while, and we're not even done yet. I'm going to give Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Barbie, and Talk to Me an A. And I'm going to give Oppenheimer an A+. Again, I loved all 4 of these movies, but as for Oppenheimer, I don't think they could have done it any better than they did. Well, guys, thank you so much for sticking around this extra long video. Again, this isn't going to be my normal format. This is just something I wanted to do to get you all caught up about what my opinions were about the 4 best movies that came out this past month. If you want some more in-depth thoughts about what I thought about all 4 of these movies, again, my letterbox is in the description below. I have reviews for all 4 of them. Go check it out. And let me know in the comments down below which of those 4 movies did you like the best. I feel like a lot of people are either going to say Oppenheimer or Barbie. And while I do think you're not wrong, I do think Talk to Me does deserve a lot more love. And as for Mission Impossible, that's already getting love, so I don't need to say it. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys really are the best. And make sure to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.